Turn the wonderful Dharma wheel to teach us how to leave suffering and attain bliss and end birth and death and quickly realize non-birth.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one. Namo sadanto suchetoye alahati sanmiao sanputo Wu shang shen shen wei miao fa. 百千万劫难遭遇，我今见闻得受持，愿解如来真实义。Supreme and wondrous Dharma, subtle and profound, rarely is encountered, even in a billion eons. But now we see and hear it and accept it reverently. May we truly understand the Buddha's actual meaning. Hello everyone, welcome to today's class. I think this is class number 23. If I'm not mistaken, we missed the class last week, which gave me an opportunity to not just do something on behalf of the Berkeley Buddhist Monastery, but also gave me a chance to revisit, go through the entire Sutra and make sure that all my notes are in the right place. As usual, we will begin by chanting Medicine Master Buddha's name 7 times. Namo, quelling disasters, lengthening life, Medicine Master Buddha. 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 Medicine Master does come one, Medicine Master does come one, Medicine Master does come one, Medicine Master does come one. Okay, let me change my slide. No, not yet. Not dedication of merit. Okay. Oh, no, not yet. All right. So last week, we covered the 9 great vow, and for me personally, that was very interesting because anytime we talk about heavens and gods and Buddhist cosmology, I don't know, I find it extremely fascinating. Does anyone has any questions based from last week's class, or any questions in general? Everyone hear that sound? That's the sound of nothing. No one has any questions? It's been 2 weeks. not just last week. I mean, we didn't have a class last week, so it's been 2 whole weeks. In these 2 whole weeks, has no one had thoughts about the Dharma?
Amitabha, Dhamma Master.
Yes, we finally have someone, Tan from Melbourne.
Amitabha, yes. When Dhamma Master talk about those cultivators with externalist views, I went through a bit. It made me think a bit about those immortal. They also cultivate and end up like immortal. So those are they also included in the wrong views? I think they may.
Okay, you mentioned immortals. What do you mean when you say immortals? What do you have in mind? I want to.
Yeah, because I think at some point when I went through the slide, and it said that those cultivators, they cultivate with lots of others, and how say that, lots of efforts. And at some state the mental they reach some mental state, etc., and then they can dwell either for long, how say that, the life is long, or they dwell in. Yeah, and that's why it's made me, because when I remember in the I attend the Shrangama, is mentioned about more or less similar thing, and they end up like immortals.
Yes.
So they have thousands of has that life lengths.
Yes.
And they dwell also in that that type of how's that realm of themselves. That's specific to themselves. If I understood. So is that more or less the same than what the Mamasa was explaining? So are they belong to the same or just different? I'm not too sure.
Okay, external in Buddhism, if I understand correctly, when the term externalists are used, it is meant to describe people who believe in something outside of themselves. So, how you say it? So the ultimate salvation for them comes from something else rather than from inside them. So they don't seek within their own nature to find wisdom. So to me, that's what I understand externalists to be. And then
yeah, me too. Yep.
And then when it comes to immortals are let's put it this way. I think some immortals can be considered externalists and some immortals are not, because the way I see what immortal means, it's more a classification of people who have spiritual abilities based on their practice. So whether they believe in like Buddhist teachings or not, their ultimate understanding about right view, and whether they fall in the category of externalists or not, I think would depend on the individual. You can't just say because they're immortals, therefore they are externalists or they are not externalists. Immortals is just a category of living beings who have practiced so well that they gain spiritual abilities. Does that help you understand?
Yes. I think you totally answered to my question. So
Okay.
that means they are partly that are externalists and partly not externalists. Depends on their.
I wouldn't say partly. If whether they are or not is you would have to see what they believe or how they view the world, their understanding of the world.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that means it depends on their course ground. How they start from wrong views or from right views.
I wouldn't use like causal ground to say that, although you could say it's related, but I don't think you can just say. I don't think you can say based on whether they're immortal or not, whether they're externalists. It's two different things. Huh?
Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, I think you answered to my question very, very clearly. Thank you so much, Dhamma Master.
Yeah, but in the long run, we shouldn't discriminate because, like the Buddha, at different times in his past lives, he was an immortal. He was a rishi, which is the Indian, I believe, the Indian word for immortal. And along our path towards enlightenment, we take on different roles at different times.
Yep.
Yeah. So it doesn't mean, yeah, it's not like if you are like that means you're going to be like that forever. Oh,
That's right.
okay,
Yep.
okay, yeah, all right.
Thank you so much, Dharma Master.
Okay, and Kim Hoa asks, okay, let me see. Ron has a question. People of India who study sects of yoga, are they externalists? Again, Ron, I would answer your question in the same way as how I answered Tan's question. Or you have to really understand what they believe in and their views of the world. Okay, any more questions?
Yes, JinHe Faster, this is
Yes.
Julie.
Yes, Julie.
In your ninth great vow, you say that the external sects with the wrong views, and especially the one where they are rigid attachment to the rites and rituals.
Yes.
So that now that the seventh moon is coming to Asia, and I was asked whether shall one continue to burn incense by the roadside to pray to the spirits or not, to discontinue with this practice of the Taoist people.
Oh. Okay, so what Julie is referring to is the 7th month is called, we have a celebration called the Ghost Festival month. And what you see if you go to more of like a Chinese, Asian, East Asian kind of neighborhood, is that people leave out offerings on the side of the roads, and they light joss sticks, and those offerings they believe are for the hungry ghosts that are that get to be released from the hells, so that they can come out and reduce the suffering for that little while. So Julie's question is that so first, Julie, you have to be able to say, oh, is that an externalist view or not? And to understand where that Hungry Ghost Festival came from. Okay, before I answer Julie, my screen is flickering. Sometimes I see like flashes on my screen. Is anyone seeing those flashes, or is it just on me?
It's good for my side.
Okay, no flashing, right?
Yeah, fine for my screen as well.
Okay, good. All right, then I can ignore the flashing. Okay, so the origins of the Hungry Ghost Festival comes from Ulaanbaatar. So Ulaanbaatar, let me see if I can get my facts right. Ulaanbaatar is when I think Mahamogayana I think Venerable Mahamogayana. Okay, you all have to Google or you have to research it yourself, because I don't have the facts online. But there's something called the Ulaanbaatar Sutta or Sutra, where one of the Buddha's disciples' mother had passed away, and because he was an arhat, he was able to explore where the rebirth for his mother had taken place, and she had fallen into the hells. So he tried to use his spiritual abilities to help his mother, but he was not successful. And so he went to the Buddha and asked the Buddha what could be done. So the Buddha said, okay, from now on, anyone who has the same wish as my disciple, what they can do is they can take a basin and fill the basin up with offerings for the Sangha and bring it to the temple. And then all the monks will come in all the way places, and as they accept the offerings, they will recite on behalf of the people who the offerings are intended for. And then all these beings in the hells will be liberated from their respective sufferings. So that's the origin of this Hungry Ghost Festival. So throughout time, Ulaanbaatar has been, the understanding of what Ulaanbaatar is has been distorted into different festivals, celebrations, and all kinds of cultures and practices and traditions that you see now, like in Japan. They celebrate, I think they call it Ubon, but they celebrate it in a very different way from its original roots. If you look at like the Taoists, when they celebrate their understanding, it becomes the Hungry Ghost Festival, and there's a lot of people who follow after tradition, but they don't know what they're doing. So tradition, like what, like my mother, for example, and my grandmother, they would do the same thing. They would put out food and light incense, and if you ask them if they understood what they were doing, they would say that this is something which has been done in my family, and they believe that it's because of various reasons, but there is no how you say, they are unable to really it's just a belief. It's a held on view that is not, how you say, that they haven't done research or understanding on. Yeah. So I would say if anyone has any doubt, if you want to do that, it's fine. You can continue doing that. But if you have any doubt about what is actually going on, I would suggest that you read the Ulaanbaatar Sutra and go back to the roots of how it all began. So if you go to like our DRBA temples, we don't do what the Taoists do, which is putting out the incense by the side of the road and putting out the offerings. We do that in a different way. When we do great transferences, I remember I was at Tân Pian, and I'm not sure what it was connected to, but we do a great transference. I think it was the end of the Emperor Liang ceremony or something. And I'm going to call on Ahan. Ahan, are you there?
Yes.
Ahan, when we do the great transference at Tân Pian, what was that for?
Just we starting do the Orabama assembly first, then later only we do the transfer, just like at the yellow booklet there.
But there's one where we have a lot of the food in the all on the,
yeah. Okay, one is Mongshan is different. Mongshan is different transfer. Only the words they change only from actually we the words is from changing, we chanting this merit transfer, but we just change the word to we offering this milk transfer to whatever lah.
I know what was that the ceremony about. So it's the great Mengshan.
Yeah.
Because I only encountered it once. I don't think we do it at CDTB. So what was it connected to? Was it Emperor Liang or
connected to Emperor Liang and Emperor Liang only lah, I think.
Emperor Liang? Okay. Yeah.
So for Amitabha, we also do for
Tathagata also.
Yeah. And basically, if I may say, it is also, basically we do the Mongsang is for all the beings, or all the beings, including the hungry ghosts that were around. We make offering to them so that they have a chance to actually relieve themselves from suffering. And for those hungry ghosts who are hungry, we actually make that be offering to them. And that's the whole thing's all about, Amitabha.
Okay.
This is Sue, by the way.
All right. Thanks, Sue. Yeah. So for Julie's question about so we in Buddhism we do something like very very similar to what the Taoists do, but what we understand the Hungry Ghost Festival to be is from the Ulaanbaatar Sutra, and we do it very differently. Does that help?
Asha, may I ask?
Yes.
So again, basically, I think
the difference between the Taoist and the Buddhist is this. The Taoist, I mean, from when young, I noticed that actually I noticed people put the prayers at the side of the road when it comes to the seventh month or 15th of the seventh month.
Yes.
And as Pastor says, make offerings to those beings that come, the hell beings. But the thing is, they because in Buddhism we actually do certain chanting, the mantra chanting, so they can actually get it. And in Taoism, I don't think they just put it there like that. It's basically a culture. I don't think they have any inkling idea about what it is all about. I mean, whether they actually they think they will get it. But if I'm not mistaken, Faster, I heard somebody told me, somebody relate this story to me. They have these young children. Because they are young, they are very pure. They take the children to shopping. And the children can see that beings in the shopping complex, the food area, they actually can eat the food faster. The children can actually see that. So I don't know, Pastor.
Yeah, neither do I. And I wouldn't confuse like for example, like when it comes to Taoism, I wouldn't confuse my own lack of understanding as a reflection of whether the people who do it, whether they understand or not. I think those are two separate things. So I'm not going to comment on Taoism because I do not know much about Taoism, and what I know is probably going to be wrong. Yeah, so that doesn't.
I think mainly, sorry, Pastor. I think mainly it's culture. To me, I think it's culture, Chinese culture, just to do that. That's all I think.
Yeah, again, I think that's a very simplistic way of looking at Taoism. There's a lot to Taoism. Shufu says that Taoism is kind of like high school. I might get it mixed up, but the analogy is Confucianism is like grade school, and then you go one level higher is Taoism, and you go higher, then there's the Dharma. So Taoism in its essence is not a small thing. It is an extremely there's a lot of wisdom in Taoism. So yeah, I'm not going to trifle Taoism is actually a lot of the practices in Taoism are very similar to Buddhism as well. Yeah, and if you practice, I think you will find that Taoism is actually really, really deep. All right. Okay. Let me see. Okay, Ron has a question. If we set up a plaque for deceased parents during Ulambana, say last year, do we have to set up a plaque each year, for after Ulambana? It depends. Plaques, there are different ways of setting up a plaque. Sometimes some plaques are set up for a short period of time. Sometimes certain plaques are permanent. So you would have to go back to the place where you set up your plaque and find out more. Is it a permanent plaque or not? But regardless if it's a temporary or a permanent plaque, if you just set it up once and then you forget all about it, it's as good as temporary. Oh, Ron. So I think your heart matters as much as the physical plaque. Both have to be there. Yeah. But if you don't have a physical plaque, like some people, it's not easy for them to put up a plaque, then you can put up a virtual plaque through your heart by not forgetting your parents, and whenever you do good deeds, you keep them in mind. Okay? All right. So, Ron, if it's a temporary plaque, and then if you want to, you can set up another one for them. Okay, good questions, everyone. Okay, we will come back to the questions. Let's get back to the Sutra, which is why we're here today. And then we'll revisit the questions before the Sutra finishes. Okay? All right, so in front of you, you see the 10 great vow. I'm going to put my palms together and recite. I vow that in a future life, when I attain Bodhi, I shall cause sentient beings who fall into the hands of the law and are bound, interrogated, whipped, fettered, imprisoned, sentenced to execution, or subjected to endless disasters, hardships, abuse, and humiliation, so that they are torn by grief and distress and suffering in body and mind, to obtain, upon hearing my name, liberation from all worry and suffering by means of my blessings, virtue, and awesome spiritual power. Okay, so the 10 Great Vow, Medicine Master Buddha is now looking at people who are oppressed by the law, and not just oppressed by the law, they are undergoing some form of torture, they are being bound, being tied up. Interrogated is a extreme form of questioning, and then being whipped, being beaten, your freedom taken away. And then he then moves a bit sideways, or he says people who are also subjected to endless disasters, hardships, abuse, humiliation, to the extent where they are torn by grief and distress. So he's talking about these two groups of people. And interestingly, I believe in the Earth Store Sutra, it talks about if you are being whipped, like what Medicine Master Buddha is referring to right now. What do you have to do in order to get the retribution of whipping? You have to treat one of the things that you can do to get whipped in a future life is that if you have stepchildren, or if you are taking care of children under your care, given to under your care, you treat them poorly compared to others. So you are playing favoritism. And there's actually a story. I don't think we're going to finish the 10 Great Vow, because what we're going to talk about, I'll give people an overview of the 10 Great Vow. We're going to talk about retribution of being whipped, and then I have a story that happened during the Buddha's time about what it feels like to be totally helpless, where all hope is gone, and then we can move on to talk about what blessings and virtue are, and then we can open it up and listen to what everyone thinks blessings and virtue, because I myself for a long time was very, very confused between blessings, merit, and virtue. Blessings is another word for merit, and Shufu always uses them together. Shufu always talks about merit and virtue, but I couldn't really, I didn't really understand what merit and virtue was. Yeah, and then we can talk about what we can go into detail about, not too much detail about what the powers of a Buddha are. Yeah, so I don't think we can do a lot of that for today, because I also want to answer a question that Hilda asked about a simile of the rough and a meditation topic. Yeah. So okay, so talking about being whipped, Shufu gave us this story. This story actually came from Shufu, and is about one of Confucius' disciples. We talked about Confucianism earlier, and Confucius had a disciple when he was young. His name was I'm definitely going to pronounce it wrongly. It's Min Chu Qian, or something like that. And so when this boy was young, his mother had died. So his father took on another wife to help take care of the family, because the father was not around most of the time. So this stepmother of Min wasn't a very nice person. So when she married his father, she already had her own son. So he got an instant brother and an instant mother. And what she would do is that she would give, when she made clothes for her son and her stepson, she would give her own son jackets that were filled with proper materials, like probably feathers at the time, and layers of cotton, so that in winter you would feel warm. But when she made jackets for her stepson, she would fill it with, I don't remember right now, but it would be filled with something that looks nice but doesn't do anything. Doesn't keep you warm at all. But this boy never complained. So one day when he was, okay, there's Miss Chong, I'm going to mute you. Okay. So one day when he was out with his father, I think they were riding a horse or something. And it was cold, and when you ride a horse or a carriage, the wind blows, you're going against the wind. And this boy started shivering, and the father got upset at him because he said, why are you shivering? It's not even, that cold. And then later the father found out that his clothes weren't keeping him warm at all. And his father got really mad and wanted to, I think, beat his wife or like reprimand his wife for treating his son in that way. How can she be unfair? What kind of what kind of mother would treat children differently from their own son or daughter? Yeah, that's not real compassion. But then his own son told him, he said, "Father, don't do that, because if anything were to happen to the woman, then two sons would end up suffering. And it's better if just one son suffers while the other one is well taken care of." So that's the story of that came to my mind when I was thinking of this 10th grade vow. Yeah. And as to the second part about being subjected to a disaster or hardship, that you are so torn by grief. Well, during the Buddha's time, there was a lady who lost her baby. Her baby died. And she was so sad that the story goes that she became mad. Yeah, she became mad with grief, meaning no one could console her, no one could make her see things in a logical way. So she ran around asking people for help to bring her baby back to life. And then it suddenly occurred to her that the Buddha was around. And she thought to herself, if anyone could bring my baby back, surely it has to be the Buddha. So she ran to the Buddha with the baby in her arms, and she said, "Oh, Blessed One, please help me. You have to bring my baby back." So the Buddha, looking at her, and this is related to the Buddha's 10 powers, the Buddha knew exactly what to do. So the Buddha told her, he said, "Okay, I can help you, but first you have to do one thing for me." And she immediately said, What do I have to do?" The Buddha said, "You have to go to a house and said you have to collect a mustard seed from a house, and you have to collect 100 mustard seeds. What are mustard seeds? When you eat Indian curry and you have this small little black ball, like very small, round, like 1 millimeter in size. That would be a mustard seed. So the Buddha said, you have to collect 1 mustard seed from a house, and you have to collect 100 seeds, meaning she has to go to 100 different houses and bring them back to me. And the woman said, okay, and she wanted to leave immediately. And then the Buddha said, but there's one thing you have to know. The mustard seed can only come from a house where no person has died before in the house. So at that time, probably, like if you look at villages, like in Chinese villages, and I didn't know about Chinese villages, but I guess the same must be in India. Families will live there for long generations. You have a family living there for a long time. So the woman said, okay, and straight away she ran off. And so she went to the first house. She said, "Do you have any mustard seeds? I need just one." And mustard seed in India is a very common ingredient. It's almost as common as like garlic or onions for Indian cooking. And so it's like going to a house asking for sugar, I think. Yeah. That's the same kind of thing. So she went to the house, said, "Do you have any mustard seeds?" And the woman of the house or the man of the house will answer, "Oh yes, we have some." And she said, "I only need one." And the first house she went to, the person came out with just one mustard seed, and then she remembered the condition the Buddha gave her. So her second question would be, "Has anyone died here before?" And the person would be, "Oh yeah, my grandmother just died last week." She said, "Oh, then I can't have your mustard seed." So she would run to the next house and go through the whole process. And every time she asks, "Has anyone died in this house before?" the answer will come back the same, yes. Maybe not immediately, but like last year or 10 years ago or 15 years ago, my great-grandfather or my auntie or someone died here. And the story the one that I read doesn't say how many houses she had to go through, but she finally realized that, there is no house that no one has ever died before. And she understood the way of life. This is the way of life. People are born, people die. Some people die young, some people die old, and they die through different reasons and causes. And it was through that she got over her state. And then she went to the Buddha and thanked the Buddha for his help. Yeah. So that was the story that came to my mind when I read this 10 Great Vows. People who torn by grief and they feel so hopeless that they don't know where they can turn to. Okay, now let's look at merit or blessings and virtue. Anyone wants to volunteer? Difference between blessings, merit, and virtue?
I can have a try, Dhamma Master.
Yes. Yes, Tan.
I think merit is something that is a good deed that you do, and in general. And I think virtue is something also good deed that you do, but a kind of hidden way. That means you don't advertise it. You don't show off. You don't praise or even talk about it. You just do, and just like not doing, just like you did it and you forgot totally about it. So it's quite internal, the virtue, that I remember clearly. And merit is just a good deed that you do. I may be wrong, but I don't know. Yeah, I roughly remember like that.
That sounds pretty good. But what do other people think?
Sure. May I?
Yes.
So here. Basically, to my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, blessings is something that we do outwardly, as Tam has said. For example, when we make offerings and things like that, and we help people, you actually do it outwardly, and people can actually see it. People may not see it also, but sometimes you do help people, and some people may not know about it. Okay, but then the people whom you help know about it. Blessings basically is things that you do, as Tam said, good deeds. Whereby merit and virtue, the difference is this. Merit and virtue is when you do something, where you actually do it for you actually try to change yourself. That is when merit comes in. When you do something that it is basically, not that you're selfish, basically like, you have these bad habits. You have bad habits and you want to change. You change it. That is doing merits. That's how I see it. And one of the merits that you can actually, that people do not know, is when you sit meditation, you're actually making merits. From what I'm understanding, from what I understood from Six Petya's Sutra, to be able, when you sit in meditation, if you can do it, it's good, because you actually bear that pain, you get that patience, which is a kind of merit. That's how I so understand it to be. Correct me if I'm wrong. Amitabha.
Okay. Yes. But also we are talking about the difference between merit and virtue. And you are merit and virtue, you are lumping them together.
Oh, yes, Master, yes. Do clarify that. Thank you, Amitabha.
Okay. Anyone else?
JinHe Faster.
Yes.
Merit is something that deserves positive recognition, whereas virtue is an absolute inherent qualities which is necessary for our well-being and happiness.
Okay, I lost you there. You have to. that's very deep. Say that again.
Merit is something you do that people recognize, whereas virtue is inside you, the quality.
Okay, quality.
That will give you happiness, happiness and well-being inside you.
Okay. And let me read the chat box. It says, okay, so Julie says merit is something that deserving positive recognition, and then virtue is absolute, an inherent quality necessary for our well-being and happiness. And then Kim Ho says merit is good action. Merit equals virtue. Merit is good action. Virtue is effects of doing meritorious deeds. Equals blessings come from virtue. Okay, let's see what the official.
Can I say something?
Yes, of course, Hilda, please.
Yeah, it's almost like the same as everyone has said about the six patriarchs, because when he was talking about the difference between blessings and merit and virtue, and that the Emperor Liang was asking how much merit and virtue I had, and he made a lot of offerings, so he had lots of blessings but no merit and virtue. And then the difference between merit and virtue, he says, is, inwardly your mind humble is merit, outwardly your behavior respectful is virtue. And then continuously thought after thought, cultivating is merit, and a straightforward mind is virtue.
Okay, let me type it out so everyone can because I didn't reference six patriarch. I should have. Okay, inwardly, say that again.
Oh, so there are different, he explains this in different lines. So one is seeing one's essential nature is merit. And then if you make a column for merit and one separate for virtue, equanimity is virtue. To be flexible and unimpeded in thought after thought.
To be what? Flexible?
To be flexible and unimpeded in thought after thought. Always cognizant of the true and wondrous workings of one's original nature.
Always cognizant of what?
That he lumps it together. Always cognizant of the true.
Okay, what I'll do is I'm going to share this on WhatsApp.
Okay.
Yeah, so people can get that.
This is on page 38.
Page 38, the new
version.
Okay. Okay. All right. Make a note of that. Thank you, Hilda. Yeah, I forgot to reference six patriarch. Yeah. Okay. Okay, let's look at what I have instead. Okay, what is merit in Sanskrit? If you want to look it up, it's called punya, which is interesting because in Malay language, if you're from Malaysia, punya means mine, what belongs to me. So merit is wholesome actions. Okay, so it's not just action, it's wholesome, created by the performance of virtuous deeds. So it's related, which result in the form of happiness in the future. So if you have you are virtuous and then you create wholesome actions that result because of cause and effect, it will result in the form of happiness. And then what is interesting is, and is connected to a story which I'm going to tell later, It says this merit may be accumulated over many lifetimes and dedicated toward a specific outcome, such as a favorable rebirth for oneself or another. Coming to Ron's question about black for his parents, this is one of them, rebirth for another. Rebirth in the retinue of the future Buddha Maitreya. Some people, they say, oh, I wasn't born during Shakyamuni Buddha's time. I want to be reborn in Maitreya Buddha's time. There you go. And the last one is all the achievement of Buddhahood for the welfare of all sentient beings. So that is merit. And it's interesting because it talks about when you are doing the wholesome act, you can accumulate and get all the benefits over different lifetimes, or you can specify if you want it for one specific lifetime. And what's that? That's transference or dedication. When we do transference or dedication, this is what it's talking about. So anytime you do something wholesome, like you do an act of generosity for the triple jewel or for someone in need, you should remember to dedicate the merit to whatever you want. So either rebirth in the Pure Land, being reborn during the next Buddha, Maitreya, Bodhisattva when he comes back as a Buddha. Yeah, so you can have that. And maybe I'll tell this, let me see, we have 10 minutes left. I will reserve the story. I will see how many people can guess what the story is going to be. But there's a story about a prediction given by a Buddha and a vow made by a person to become a Buddha. And I will tell the story next time, because once you understand what the 10 powers of a Buddha is, then that story makes more sense. So I'm not going to talk about that story today. Okay? All right. And so what am I going to talk about right now? Okay, I am going to answer Hilda's question on WhatsApp. I just need to find the slide. And her question was about okay, let me, Hilda, you want to ask your question again, or you want me to read it out?
I can ask a question again.
Okay.
It was like a two-part question.
Okay.
One
just to be fair, Hilda, don't change your question. All right.
No.
Okay. Yes, go ahead.
It was the parable of the boat. I mean, it has the sense that to cross is we need the boat, but once we are done with the boat, we don't need it anymore once we are on the other side, on the other shore. And that was I thought that was similar as dropping the Dharma door. That's exactly what we were talking about the other class. And then it occurred to me that maybe there is a connection with the disappearance of the seventh consciousness that happens at higher levels, as it's described in the Yogacara school. In order for me to connect everything and see the process as we are cultivating, as we move forward, how things unfold, even if I'm not there, but in other higher level beings.
Okay, so the reason why I'm taking some time from today's class to answer Hilda's question is because Hilda has asked this question before, and she has had a lot of false thinking about, in a good way. I mean that in a good way, and in her trying to understand how to use a Dharma door or a practice method. For example, counting your breath or reciting a mantra. Hilda's question is about at what stage do you continue holding your Dharma door, or what would happen as you enter deeper stages of concentration? And Hilda obviously has a question because she hasn't put in the effort to find out yet. So I hope she's going to find out soon, but you have to put in the effort. And so Hilda is asking about what is known as the Rough Simile. The Rough Simile is from the Alaga Dupama Sutta, and you see it on the screen in front of you. And in order to be able to explain the Rough Simile, you have to understand the sutta first, because it is two different things. The Rough Simile has no connection at all to what happens to the Dharma door that you are practicing as you enter deeper levels of concentration. Okay, so what is the Alaga Dupama Sutta all about? Okay, there are two similes in this sutra. One is the water snake simile. The word simile means a metaphor or example. And the other one is after the Buddha talks about the water snake simile, the Buddha talks about the rough simile, which is what Hilda is referring to. So instead of, because we are short on time, I'm not going to read this sutta, but if you want, I can send you the link and then you can read it on, I'll send you the link through WhatsApp and then you can read it if you are interested. So basically this sutra came about because there was a monk who was in seclusion by himself, and he looked at lay people and he said, lay people, there are some lay people who are stream enterers, there are some people who are once returners, and there are lay people who are non-returners. What are these? These are the first three levels of arhatship. And so he was thinking, he was looking around, he was thinking, and he said, lay people, they enjoy the householder's life. And among them are these three levels of arhatship, meaning people who have accomplished a great deal in their practice. And then he started comparing it to monks, and he's like Hilda, he started drawing conclusions. He had lines, how you connect lines between two dots, but the lines that he was connecting was between dots that weren't there. So he came up with a mistaken view that as left-home people, what the Buddha set forth in the precepts, for example, against sexual conduct, was wrong. He said, no, that as monks, we too can indulge in sexual conduct. Because his reasoning was it didn't stop the lay people from becoming, achieving the first three levels of arhatship. So then the Buddha, in explaining or scolding him what was actually going on, the Buddha talked about the water snake simile. So what did the Buddha say? The Buddha said there are some worthless men. Okay, the Buddha used the word worthless, useless people. When they study the Dharma, they don't really understand what the Dharma is all about. So that's the last sentence on the slide. It says they don't ascertain the meaning or the purpose of those dharmas with their discernment. So what do? He said because they don't understand the whole point of the Dharma, they start to argue with one another. They defend themselves in debate. When they hear someone saying something that is not correct, they say, oh, you're wrong, this is what the Buddha actually said. And then they create more afflictions because of their wrong attachment to the Dharma. And then the Buddha says, their wrong grasp of those Dharmas will lead to their long-term harm or suffering, because they grasp it wrong. So the Buddha talks about how a man wanting to catch a water snake. What's a water snake? What comes to mind is like a coral snake. A coral snake is, I think, a sea snake with red bands. And apparently they're very, very poisonous. One bite and you are, I think, quite sure to die. Or either that or like really suffer a lot. So the Buddha says, imagine if a person needs a water snake. I don't know who would need a water snake, but the Buddha is talking about someone who might need and go searching for a water snake. So you see a large water snake and then grabs it by the coils, that means in the middle of the body or by the tail. And because this person does not understand how to hold the snake, the snake will turn around, bite him, and he will suffer death or death-like suffering. Death-like suffering meaning you wish you would die or you think you had died. Okay, why? Because you don't know how to catch a snake. All right. So he says, in the same way, some worthless men study the Dharma. They don't study it with discernment, meaning they don't get the whole point of the Dharma. So they study the Dharma for attacking people, for defending themselves, they study the Dharma for knowledge, basically. For understanding, not understanding of how to reduce the greed, anger, and ignorance. That means they don't study to practice, but they study for debate, understanding, and for knowledge. Okay, so the Buddha then talk about, if you understand, the Buddha says they don't study for attacking others and or defending themselves in debate. And the Buddha likens this to, say, the same person or another person who is looking for a water snake again. Okay, he says, what would this person do? He says, you take a cleft stick. What's a cleft stick? A cleft stick is a stick with a Y at the end. It splits into a Y. So what you do is, with that Y, you can hold the snake's head without killing the snake. So you can pin the snake, the head of the snake down. And it says, having pinned it down firmly with a forked stick, then you can hold the snake firmly by the neck. So when you hold a snake by the neck near the head, the snake cannot turn around and bite you. And because it's a water snake, no matter how much it wraps around your arm or what, it's not going to kill you. You're not going to suffer death-like suffering. So then you actually get the result that the Dharma is intended to provide. So the Buddha, to drive his point further, he talked about a raft. Okay, so he says, I'm not going to show you the slides. He says that, imagine a person wants to cross a river, and the river is dangerous, meaning that if you try to cross it by yourself, you will likely drown or come to great harm. So what will you do? He said this person would look for materials and would build a raft. And after you cross the raft, he asked the monks, he said, you look at the last sentence of this. He asked the monks, he said, after reaching the other shore, he said, would the man in doing that be doing what should be done with the raft? What should be done? The man is thinking, why don't I, having hoisted it on my head or carrying on my back, go wherever I like? So the Buddha is asking his monk, he said, this man, after crossing the treacherous river, should he then carry the raft on his back? And what did the monks answer? No, Lord. Why? Because common sense. No, you don't need the raft anymore. Okay, you get that? Okay. So the Buddha said, what should the man do with the raft? Well, the man would think that the raft has been really useful, because if not for the raft, he wouldn't have been able to cross, or if he had crossed, he would probably drown. And now he can just leave it on the dry land, or just let it flow in the water, or let it sink. So the Buddha said, understanding the Dharma as taught compared to a raft, you should let go even of dharmas, to say nothing of non-dharmas. So the Buddha said, the Dharma that I have taught you, you can think of it like the raft. Okay, what does that mean? Okay, we have to ask ourselves, what is the point of the Dharma? So this whole Alagadupama Sutta is saying that, why did the Buddha teach us the Dharma? So that we can be scholars of Dharma and know everything the Dharma has to know, all the ins and outs of what the Buddha said, and use it to argue with people, or to think that we're very smart, or that we ourselves understand the Dharma and have self-mastery over the Dharma? Is that the point of the Dharma? The Buddha taught us the Dharma so that we can change ourselves and reduce greed, anger, and ignorance. But if we think that the Dharma is like how, how some people regard like the Bible or the Quran, for them that is the law, that are God's words, and if you go against that, you go against God, and you cannot. If you say anything contrary to that, you commit blasphemy. In the Dharma, the Buddha's teachings are not that at all. In fact, the Buddha said, I never spoke a word of Dharma, meaning that real Dharma cannot be spoken, and what the Buddha taught us was just like a raft. When you are crossing the river, you want to hold real tight. Okay, you don't want to fall off the raft. You want to be able to depend on the raft. But at the same time, after you cross the river, you would have understood that you don't need the raft anymore. So the raft or the Dharma is just a means to an end. It's not for you to hold on to and say that's the law, that's always going to be correct, and use it to cause afflictions for yourself and other people. So some people like to engage in like minute details of the Dharma, and they go into a lot of detail, and then they create a lot of confusion for themselves. So this say this, then the Buddha would say, yeah, you're holding the snake wrongly, and you want to be careful so the snake doesn't turn back and bite at you. Okay, so Hilda, the raft has nothing to do with how we use the Dharma door in our practice. And the only way you can find the answer to your question, what happens to your Dharma practice as you enter deeper levels of concentration, is you have to find out for yourself. People who have gone through it might tell you every time it's different. They might say you don't have to think about it, because if you do, it never goes away. So the whole point of Dharma door is to hold your sixth consciousness, the monkey mind that's causing you all these problems, is to hold that monkey mind down so that it doesn't try to have all these conjectures and propositions about what could happen. And then if that happens, and then you find out. And then if your precepted behavior, if you hold the precepts in the proper way, and you have a good foundation, and your mind is able to abide, then in quietness, without fighting against itself, then you find that you can repeat. Your chances of being able to repeat or develop the skill to enter concentration gets easier and easier, because the first time it happens, it'll probably be like like winning the lottery by luck, and then you try to figure out how to do it again and get frustrated, and then you figure out what precepts are all about, and then you realize that it's your daily lifestyle that determines your level of concentration and not your concentration skill. And then you adjust your lifestyle. And as you adjust your lifestyle and you continue your practice, then you find that the more you give up, the less attachment you have when your relationship with your life and your conditions around you changes, then the ability to enter concentration gets more and more as a skill. Then you can come back and explain and share your what happens in your case. And for everyone, it's probably different. Okay? Does that help? And then as to the seven consciousness, oh my God, that's a whole different thing entirely. That is another line between invisible dots that are not there right now. What I'm going to do, Hilda, is I'm going to send you a book called 3 Texts on Consciousness Only. And you can use that to tie your monkey mind down, because it's a very it's a very rewarding text, but it can be a bit frustrating because there's a flow to the text that you have to get past in order to understand what I think it was who translated that text. I'm not sure now who was it, Nagarjuna Bodhisattva, but it's an amazing text that we read at the RBU, and the answer to your question is probably there in a theoretical manner, but as it happens in real life, it's very, very different. Ajahn Chah, he gave a simile. He said it is like falling down a tree. So you climb a tall tree, and then imagine you lose your grip at your footing, and then you start falling. So it says what the text will say is that, as your leg slips, your hand, first you look down, and then your hand will move here, and then you will hit this branch, and then if you hit this branch this way, then you will fall that way, and you will hit another branch this way, and you fall this way, and you will fall down, not up, and there's gravity pulling at you, and the text will give you all these things. But in reality, what happens is you just fall. You're not paying attention to what's going on with where you're looking or your hand or what you're thinking. All you know is that fear and that whatever it is when you fall off a tree, and before you know it, you're on the ground. So there's a difference between text and actual experience. When you get to that level, the text is kind of like a guide for you to find some qualification and some answers that mirror your experience. But until you get there, it won't make that much sense. You can understand it from an intellectual point of view, but it won't not make sense. All right. So actually in that way, yes, Hilda, your question is connected to the Rough because of how we use the Dharma. Yeah. Okay, time up. Okay, let's look at the text. Okay, so I'm going to talk about what Ron said is correct. We are going to talk about 10 powers of the Buddha. Okay, Sue says, when I was mentioning about doing good deeds, we need to make transference. But most of the time when we do good deeds, impromptu manner, I'm not sure of others. I don't remember to do transference at that moment, but at the end of the day, I make general transference of. Yes, that's kind of true because we are not used to it. But if in your mind, you always have regard of why you're alive, what's your aim in life when you die, like being reborn in the Pure Land, or you always have regard for living beings in your mind, then everything that you do, that becomes your transference. Why I say that? Because for monks and nuns in the Mahayana tradition, we have, what's the exact term? We have vows that we make for every single thing we do. We brush our teeth, we have a verse to remind ourselves of living beings. We drink water, we have a verse. We change our clothes, we have a verse. We sit in meditation, as we adjusting the cushion, we have a verse. So our minds are trained to always be aware of living beings. So Sue, you have brought up a very valid point. It just depends on where your mind is during those moments that you're doing those deeds. Okay? All right, so we're going to transfer merit. Anyone have any more questions? We can keep it for next week, but you can bring it up now. Okay, Randy says how to break the 12 links of independent origination practice. Go meditate and observe nature and observe your mind. That's how you break the 12 links. Okay.
Well, sorry, Pastor.
Yes.
May I just ask?
Yes.
What Pastor is saying is this, that every time, everything that we do, we must make vows, Pastor?
Okay, no, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that when you said that there are a lot of times when you do good deeds, it's impromptu, and you don't think about making transferences, you can train your mind to be that way, because that's what monks and nuns are trained to do. Yeah, monks and nuns, we have what verses are there? I don't know. It just escaped my mind the name for it. Anyway, like I said, in all our daily things, like when we eat, when we sleep, when we go to sleep, when we want to meditate, when we wash our bowl, what we do after washing our bowl, when we brush our teeth, when we wake up, when we put our feet down on the ground, all of those, we have verses that we memorize that focus our attention on living beings.
Wow, that's good.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like I said, it can be trained. Then after a while, it becomes second nature, and everything that you do, you're never thinking about yourself. You're always thinking about living beings. All right? Okay. So,
thank you.
I'm going to put my palms together. And Hilda, could you just stay on the line? I saw you type in a message just now about flashing. I just wanted to, after we finish today's class, I just wanted to have a chat with you about what happened.
Okay, sure. Thank you, Dharma Master.
Okay. May every living being, our minds as one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving unity, may their minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward. May all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light dispel the darkness of their endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. Okay, thank you everyone for joining us today, and we'll see you next week.